Hello and welcome to this presentation about our postgraduate creative writing programme. I'm James Draper, I'm the manager of the Manchester Writing School here at Manchester Metropolitan University and also the admissions coordinator for our postgraduate creative writing programmes. I'm going to tell you a bit about the programmes and about the university, and then we'll go into some detail about course content and also a bit about our extracurricular events and activities to give you a sense of both the programme and also life in the Manchester Writing School. So why choose Manchester Metropolitan University? As you'll see from the facts on the screen, we're one of the UK's largest and most popular universities, and we have outstanding facilities and research-informed teaching with 85% of our research, which does include creative practice from our writers, world-leading or internationally recognised. And we're also a very international university, which is important for our programme because, as we'll talk about later, we have a very big online distance learning cohort with students based here in Manchester, throughout the UK, and also across mainland Europe and the wider world. Why choose the Manchester Writing School in particular to study creative writing? Well, as you'll see on the screen, we have some photographs here of our writing tutors, many of whom are published writers and award-winning critics, some of them having won the major literary prizes. And while being practicing writers, they're also extremely informed about the business, not just of producing, editing, redrafting and polishing creative work, but also strong links to the publishing industry, so they're all aware of what needs to be done with the text after it's been written. And our team of writers is led by Caroline Duffy, who is the UK Poet Laureate and also the creative director of the Manchester Writing School. So Caroline has the overview of the sort of ethos and mood of the school, if you like, and you'll see from the quote there that she says, "One of the greatest pleasures of my working life continues to be the Manchester Writing School, a department with a real sense of family, achievement and celebration, and an ethos of nurturing and innovation." And that sort of message that Caroline puts across and infuses into the team is something that we like to carry through everything that we do in the school. And we do like to keep in touch with members of the public in Manchester and also in the broader literary community, and we like to keep in touch with our graduates and alumni as well and celebrate their successes. Some other facts and figures about the school. We are the UK's biggest and most successful postgraduate literary community. On our creative writing programme, the master's course, we have about 250 students altogether, half of them based here on campus and the other half are our online distance learners. And we have a very high success rate with more than 80 students and graduates now going on to have their books published. Some of them have very successful publishing careers with several books out or ongoing book deals and so on. As I said earlier, the strong industry contacts and our tutors bring those contacts into the school with regular visits from agents, editors, publishers, people who work in broadcasting, who can talk to our students about what's happening in the publishing industry today and how they might place their books once they've been written, and also about other opportunities available to students within the literary and arts industries. We run a series of events and festivals here in Manchester, and we also make audio podcasts or video recordings of these where we can, so that students based remotely can access them. And there are opportunities within these events which will often feature a guest author in conversation with or being introduced by one of our own writers. There are opportunities at these events for students to take part as well and to read from their own work. We have lots of collaborative projects and opportunities. We encourage our students to work with, for example, students from the School of Art on illustrated books, or to work with musicians from the Royal Northern College of Music next door to produce musical compositions, our students writing the words, the composition students setting them to music, and so on and so forth. So while we are concentrating on writing books and on the business of creative writing, we're always looking outwards and sideways as well for those collaborative projects and opportunities for students. I'll talk about this in a bit more detail a little later on when we come to look at course structure, but flexible learning for busy people is a key element of our programme, and our programme is designed to be able to fit around busy lives. And what do our students do? They go on into writing, publishing, teaching, journalism, or indeed on to further study, which can be additional master's study, or it can also be a PhD for those wanting to go into academia. On our Creative Writing Masters programme, we offer 2 levels of study. We offer the standard MA, Master of Arts in Creative Writing, which is a 180 credit programme, and you can complete that in 1 year studying full-time, or you can split it in half and do it over 2 years if you study part-time. From this year, we're also offering a higher level of Master's qualification, an MFA, which is a Master of Fine Arts in Creative Writing. This incorporates all of the elements of the MA, and then there are some additional units as well, taking it up to 300 credits, and students graduating with that higher Master's qualification. That's a 2-year programme if you study full-time, or 3 years if you study part-time. And I'll talk shortly about how that breaks down. All of our students, whether they're doing MA or MFA, choose to study one of our 4 specialist routes. We don't teach a programme which is a sort of mixed creative writing course. We ask all of our students to think in advance about which of these 4 specialist routes they want to follow. You will apply to study that specific route, so your application should be targeted to that route, and then you will stay within that specialism all the way through, including the end of the programme, where you submit your final piece, a substantial creative project in one of these areas. And we know the 4 routes that we offer are novel, which can include short fiction. The novel course focuses mainly on reading and writing novels, but there are opportunities for students who are interested in producing a collection of short fiction to do so within that novel route. We also offer poetry. We offer writing for children and young adults. And from this year, a new route for us is place writing, which is our first non-fiction route, writing about place. So, to talk in a bit of detail about how the individual programmes are structured, this is an outline of our Master of Arts programme, the MA programme, which, as I said earlier, you can complete 1 year full-time or 2 years part-time. The core units, which form the sort of spine through all of our Creative Writing Masters programmes, are the reading units and the workshops, and all students take 2 of each. The reading units are split into 2 discrete groups of literature. Reading 1 looks at modern literature, so that's mainly from Second World War up to the end of the 20th century. Although there may be some work that is a little earlier than that if there are particular lessons to be learned from it. So there might be a bit of classic literature as well, but mainly that Reading 1 unit will look at modern literature. Reading 2 is a contemporary literature course, so that takes you from the turn of the millennium right up to the present day. And everyone will study a reading list for those units within your specialist route. So it will be reading novels, reading poetry, reading children's and young adult books, or reading place writing. And the idea of those units is to give students a broad sense of a range of options available to you as writers. So you'll be doing a little bit of literary criticism as you're reading these, as you might do on an English Studies Masters programme, but you'll also be reading them, looking at the techniques and the styles available to you as a writer, and building up a toolbox, if you like, of options that you can then deploy in your own writing. In parallel with those, we have our workshop units, and everyone does 2 of these, 2 whole terms of workshopping, again within your specialist route. So it will be a novel workshop, a poetry workshop, a children's workshop, or a place writing workshop. And this is where, on a weekly basis, there's a rota for submissions, and within the group, students are submitting work, reading each other's material, preparing commentary, and then in the weekly classes, responding to them and having a discussion about the work. And the idea is that what you're writing in those workshops should be material that will eventually, or might eventually, end up in a full-length book. So, for example, if you're on the novel route, you're building that up chapter by chapter. On poetry, for example, you'll be producing poems that might come together into your final collection. So from the off on those workshops, we do ask students to have in mind that's the end result, that you're working towards writing a full-length book, but there is opportunity for experimentation. So you might start off writing 1 book and then decide part way in that's not what you want to do and move on to something else. That's fine. Some students might want to try out a number of ideas in the early stages of the workshops and use them to get a sense of what it is that they want to do. Really, it's for you to use to give you some guidance and some steer on what it is that you're writing and get some editorial feedback. But the idea ultimately is, as the workshops move on, you should be working towards writing a book. Everyone also, so as well, that's the sort of core of the course: 2 reading units, 2 workshop units, reading and writing. That's our sort of key formula on our programme. Everyone takes an elective unit, and I will talk about those in a little while. And the end piece for the Master of Arts programme is the dissertation. And this is where you'll spend a term with one-to-one supervision, working with a tutor to pull together all of that material that you produced in the workshop, and you will hand in for assessment there. The dissertation will be an extract from a full-length book. So usually it will be the opening, but it can be another part of the book if you like, and it will be 15,000 words of prose or 300 lines from a poetry collection. And I'll talk a bit more about that when we come to the assessment element. So that's the Master of Arts programme. It's those 6 units, 2 reading units, 2 workshops, an elective and a dissertation. And you will do, if you study full-time, a reading unit and a workshop unit in the first term, repeat that in your second term, and in your third term you would do the elective and while you're doing the dissertation. And you can see on screen there I've also put out an example of what part-time study might look like. This might vary depending on what's running and when you start the course and so on. But if you're studying part-time, you basically split that in half so that you're doing 1 unit at once. So in your first year, term 1 would be just the reading unit, term 1 the workshop, then your elective, and you'll see year 2 repeats that model. So in 1 term you would do the second reading unit, the next term workshop, and then finish off with the dissertation. The Master of Fine Arts programme, you would do all of those elements of the MA, so you would spend your 1 year or 2 years completing the MA, handing in the dissertation, and then you move on to an additional year, which is what we call the writing up year. The main business of that year is to complete your full-length book. So that takes what you did for the dissertation and continues it into a completed manuscript on a unit which is called manuscript. And to support that, you would be assigned a mentor, a member of the teaching team, who will work with you on a one-to-one basis over that year with regular tutorials, giving you advice and guidance and feedback, continuing some of what went on in the workshops, but mainly starting to think about how you pull all of that material together into a completed manuscript, thinking about the overall structure, about editing the material together, and cutting back to make sure that everything in there counts. So the manuscript is the main business of that MFA year, and as you'll see from the screen, you're writing a full-length prose book of 40 to 80,000 words, of a poetry, a complete collection of 1,000 to 1,500 lines. And you also take an additional unit during that year, the industry. And this is a unit which will run over a term and features weekly talks or question and answer sessions with experts from the publishing industry. So you'll be meeting agents, editors, publishers, people who work in broadcasting, people who work on adaptation, a variety of things each year. The programme varies from year to year, but the idea is to give you an overview of what's happening in the publishing industry and a sense of the options available to you as a writer when you've completed that manuscript. So these 2 units in that writing up year work nicely together. You're completing that manuscript and you're also learning what you might do with it or what other options are available to you as a writer afterwards. And you'll see that I've done the sort of outline of the example part-time structure for the Master of Fine Arts programme mirrors the MA. So you would do the MA in 1 or 2 years, and then you would have that writing up year, working on the manuscript and the industry. Just to give you a sense of the content of the course, because we're often asked by students what sort of books are covered. I won't read through all of these, but you can see on the screen for each of the specialist routes a few titles. These are the kind of books that you will be looking at, or the kind of poets whose work you will be studying on a weekly basis during those reading units. So the modern ones and the contemporary ones there. And you can have a look through this in your own time. As I say, these will vary from year to year. This is just to give you a sense of the kinds of books that we are concerned with in those reading units and looking at in those classes. The elective unit which everyone takes, there's a variety of options. Now these are studied in the, if you're full-time, in parallel with the dissertation. If you're part-time, they will come during the summer term of your first year. And you can take a selection of taught units which look at specialist areas of creative writing. So crime fiction, which is studying crime books and then having a go at writing your own crime story. Historical fact fiction, where you would be working with historians and creative writers, those who write historical literature, and exploring the relationship between fact and fiction, how things are changed or manipulated or used from history in historical fiction. Media skills for writers, which looks at how you can adapt your creative writing skills to journalism and journalistic writing skills. So how you might get opportunities writing features or interviews or articles. And also on that course, looking at how you can use the media, particularly social media, blogging and so on, to promote yourself as a writer and establish a writer's profile as you build your career. Teaching creative writing is where we demonstrate to students a range of different methods of teaching creative sessions with a range of guest practitioners coming in and demonstrating, and then students reflect on those and produce their own lesson plan for a proposed creative writing workshop. So that's a good one for anyone with an interest in going on to deliver writing workshops. Writing about relationships, this one is often described by the unit leader as the antidote to 50 Shades of Grey. And it's looking at writing romantic and erotic literature and doing it well. So that's one that's there for anyone interested in that. Most of these units are delivered on an intensive residential basis, and that means that rather than teach them a weekly class each week through the term, as we do with the core units, most of these are delivered over 3 full days here on campus in Manchester, and that allows us to bring everyone together, our distance learning students and also our campus-based students, spend 3 days doing the sessions, and then everyone will go off and work on the assignments for submission in the autumn. So there are those options there for elective units. At the top you'll see there's the creative project. This is a really popular elective because really you can do whatever you would like to do. It's an opportunity for students to work outside of their core study. So if you're a novelist, this is your chance to do some poetry. If you're a place writer, this is your chance to write some fiction, and so on and so forth. You can mix yourself up there really and do whatever it is you want. And if there's something that you're particularly interested in doing, for example, setting up your own writer's website, putting on an event or a little festival, working in collaboration, as I mentioned earlier, with students or practitioners from other areas, doing an exhibition of artwork, producing an anthology, anything like that, the creative project is your opportunity to do that. It's also an opportunity to take a jump and take a risk, because that's assessed by submission of a project report, and if things go wrong, you can do well in the assignment by analysing that and reporting on it. So that's a good one there for those who want to take up that opportunity. We also teach these electives in mixed groups. There are master students taking them as part of their programme of study. They're also all available as standalone CPD, continuing professional development, or short courses. So if you wanted to come in and take one of these as a standalone unit, you can do so as a CPD with accreditation, and then bring those credits into the master's programme later on. You can also attend them as a short course and just come along and take the session. So there's a variety of models there, and we find that mix within the class works really well. For example, on teaching creative writing, our writing students are very confident about producing and sharing creative work, and perhaps less sure about leading creative sessions, whereas with the teachers that come in and take that course, it tends to be the opposite, where they're very confident leading sessions, but reticent about sharing their creative work and discussing it for feedback. So it's a really nice mix to have the two groups in the room. It says at the bottom there, MA English Studies units. You can also take units, accredited units, from other degree programmes in the department and in the faculty. And our MA English Studies units are very popular for students who are thinking about going on to academic careers or working on critical literary studies and so on. So a range of options there available within the programme. And the elective really is your chance to do something outside of your core specialist route. A bit about assessment methods, how we assess each of the units. On the reading units, you'll write a 3,000-word essay. You devise the title in liaison with your tutor, and that's where you talk about some of the books that you have studied on that course, and what the styles and techniques are that you've found in there, and how you might use them as a writer, or how you might not if you've read some of the text and you think what they're doing is unsuccessful, because there are often lessons to be learned in doing that as much as there are in finding success in those works. So for each of the reading units, you'll write a 3,000-word essay. For the workshops, we don't assess you on your own creative work here, because of course that will be assessed later on in the dissertation and also the manuscript. On the workshop, we ask you to write a 1,500-word critique on somebody else's work, and what we're assessing there are your editorial skills, your ability to analyse and offer useful criticism on creative work. And again, you do that for each of the workshops that you take. Electives assessment will vary. Usually for the creative writing ones, our own courses, it's a 3,000-word piece, and it's a combination of creative or critical work depending on which elective you take. As I said earlier, the dissertation is an extract from a full-length book. This is where we're assessing your own creative material from the workshops. 15,000 words or 300 lines for poetry, and we also ask you to include in that what we call a Genesis document, and this is where you talk about the origins and development of your own creative writing. Those going on to the MFA, you'll see that for the industry unit, you will do a 3,000-word essay on an aspect of the publishing or literary industry. So that can be based on one of the talks or Q&A sessions that you have took part in, or it can be something else. If there's another aspect of the publishing industry you're interested in researching in detail. The key thing with that assignment is we ask you to pick one element and research it in depth, rather than sort of write up a summary of what you've learned across the whole course. We ask you to focus in on one particular aspect. And the manuscript, that's your full-length book, your 40 to 80,000 words of prose, or 1,000 to 1,500 lines of poetry, and that is submitted as a standalone piece. Whereas with the dissertation, you've got the Genesis document to contextualise what you're doing. When it comes to the manuscript, there's none of that. You don't introduce it, you don't offer reflection or any kind of annotation. It will be assessed as a standalone, complete book in and of itself. So that's a particularly ambitious piece of work there, and a substantial one as well at that size. Study options, I've touched on this throughout. All of our teaching is in the evening, so that's between 6 and 9 p.m. UK time. That's our core teaching for the reading units and the workshops, and classes within that slot will be 1 hour, 2 hours or 3 hours, depending on which unit you're taking or which units you're taking each term. And this is because most of our students are busy working during the daytime, raising a family, caring for relatives. It's this business of the course being flexible and designed to fit around you doing something else. Full-time students are normally in 2 nights a week for those core units, and part-time students 1 night a week. And in addition to that, you'll also of course be doing through the week, independently in your own time, reading material for each work, writing material if it's your turn to be workshopped, and corresponding, exchanging things on discussion forums or by email with students and other staff. And that's to be done at your own convenience. The key part for it in terms of attendance is that evening slot. And then, yeah, as I say, we'll meet in class once a week to discuss what it is that you're trying to do. The online programme follows exactly the same units and assessment as the campus-based programme, and it's that same model that through the week you would be reading and writing and corresponding, preparing your work for that class, whether it's reading a book or writing material or doing both. The main difference is that rather than meeting here on campus in Manchester for your weekly session in the evenings, you meet in an online chat room. And that again is set at 6 till 9 p.m. UK time. And for our online programme, you do have to be able to take part in those live weekly sessions. That's a key part of the way in which we teach our creative writing programme. Other courses are based on correspondence. There's no live element. You just have to exchange material on a discussion board. For ours, you do need to be able to take part in these live classes. And again, they're 6 till 9 p.m. and classes within that slot will be 1, 2 or 3 hours depending on what it is that you're doing in that term. Our core teaching in the online chats are text-based, so the interactions are typed. We don't use webcams or audio or video interaction for the main business of teaching. Most of what you will be doing in the chat room is a typed interaction in real time. It's a sort of an instant messenger model if you're familiar with using that. However, our chat room system, Adobe Connect, does allow for video and audio interaction, and tutors might use that to introduce courses or introduce particular sessions, to jump in and discuss key points quickly. So there will be or could be some audio or video element, but mainly it will be text-based, the interaction. In terms of entry requirements, to apply for the course, we ask you to send in various things. You need to fill in the online application form and then submit a personal statement. And we normally advise that you write half a side to a side of A4 for that. And really, we're looking for you to tell us why you want to do this course, why this course in particular, what it is that you're hoping to get out of it, and a bit about your background. So if you've done any creative writing workshops, if you've done previous study in the area, please tell us about that there. Likewise, if you're taking part in events or reading series or anything like that, just pop that in your personal statement. The key elements of the application, though, are the creative sample and the critical sample. The creative sample, we ask you to send in up to 2,000 words of your own writing. If it's the prose routes you're applying for, novel, children's or place. If it's poetry, up to 15 poems. Those are the maximum limits. You can submit less if you like. And we always say that for those, we would advise you to use it as a showcase of the best of what you've got to offer. So it can be a single piece of writing for prose, or a single sequence of poems, or a short pamphlet of poems, or it can be a range of extracts or pieces from different areas. Think of it as a showcase, the best of what you've got to show us. We also ask for a critical sample. For this, we don't want you to send in an essay or anything like that. We want it to be a book review of up to 500 words in length, in the style of what you would see in, for example, the Guardian Books pages, Times Literary Supplement, London Review of Books, that sort of thing. So a shortish book review, and that should be of something relatively recently published, because again our course is focusing on modern and contemporary literature. The more contemporary the better for that, really. And both samples, of course, should be relevant to your specialist route. So please don't send in a mixed portfolio of prose and poetry or adult and children's writing. It should be targeted to your specialist route: novel, poetry, children's or place. Please don't send in script or sort of journalistic non-fiction or anything like that. Keep it relevant to the route you're applying for. We ask for one reference, and really, if your referee can talk about your writing and verify that you're suitable for postgraduate study, that's fine. But really, the reference is mainly to confirm your identity, so don't worry too much. A lot of students applying for or candidates applying to be students on our programme are returners to education, been out of education for a long time. Not easy to get hold of people who can talk about your academic or creative work. Don't worry too much. The reference can just confirm your identity. So it can be from an employer, doctor, anything like that. Someone, a professional standing who can verify your identity. Our standard entry requirement, we ask for a 2-1 BA degree in a humanities subject, but we have a very diverse cohort with lots of students coming from no professional or previous qualification background, no academic experience as such, and also people who've worked academically in other areas, the sciences or business. Don't worry about that, really. The key thing is the quality of those writing samples. That's the first thing that we will look to, and that's the main thing we will use to make our decision. And this is what the admissions tutors are looking for when they read through your application. What happens when your application comes in? It will be passed on to a member of the teaching team who works in the area you're applying for. They'll read your creative sample and the personal statement, and they're judging your application against these criteria: high standard of written English, talent and potential, control of form, style and technique, a commitment to the craft of writing, where you need to demonstrate that you're someone who is willing to have your work developed through the workshopping process and one-to-one guidance, and also, really important, substantial reading. We want you to demonstrate that you are aware of the field in which you're intending to work. If you meet those criteria, the member of the team will contact you for an interview. These are normally quite short, informal discussions. They will primarily take place over the telephone, but you can have a face-to-face interview if you prefer. A bit about the general support offered to postgraduate students. This is Kate Johnson, our postgraduate student experience tutor. We're very lucky within our faculty. She's actually based with us in the writing school and works very closely with our postgraduate students to offer one-to-one pastoral advice and guidance on matters from finance, disability, health and careers, acting as a go-between with lots of the various services, signposting students to different. Lots and lots of good support services in the university, and Kate can help our students to access them. And also social interaction through online social media, promoting events and activities and opportunities, and helping students to organise their own events and projects. So Kate is there to help out with a whole range of extracurricular activities and also provide pastoral support as and when you need it. Some feedback from previous students before we finish. These are 3 of our many published alumni and just some comments about what they've said about their time with us in the Manchester Writing School. And we've kept in touch with them. They've got profiles on our website, so we're very pleased to celebrate the successes and keep in touch with our students once they've graduated from the programme. So there's Shanta, Sarah and Graham just saying a few words about what they thought about their time in the Manchester Writing School studying our Masters programme. And there we are, time for questions now. Thank you very much for listening and I look forward to hearing from you. Thank you very much.